My memory has a problem. I can only remember things before I turned 20. That was when I had the deepest feelings for him. I woke up in a hospital bed. My body was covered in wounds. He was on one knee, proposing to me. Just as he was about to put the ring on my finger, my best friend suddenly threw a bucket of paint at me and slapped me a few times. My boyfriend not only didn't protect me, but instead stood in front of her, as if he was afraid I would hit back. People watching nearby were pointing fingers at me. They said, "She got what she deserved." She used to bully her desk mate in school, causing that person to suffer from depression. She had done many bad things in the past, and now she suddenly has amnesia. I don't know if it's real or fake. Her boyfriend was coldly watching from the side, no expression at all. Suddenly, my phone rang. I received a text message, "Run quickly. Don't trust anyone." The strong smell of paint penetrated my nose. I couldn't stand it and fainted again. When I woke up, Nathan was sitting next to me. He looked at me with a helpless and pained expression. Seeing that I was about to speak, he spoke first. "Sophia, don't blame her. The one at fault is you. You should atone for your sins." I felt cold all over, looking at Nathan in disbelief, the one who was gentle and indulgent towards me in my memories, and the one who is now cold and accusing me. It's like they are two different people. Just then, Nathan played another recording. My sharp and hate-filled voice came through. "I won't let you off easily. You deserve to be punished. Even if I know David, so what? My dad is a judge. I'm definitely fine." My tone was both arrogant and rude. Nathan looks at me, confused, so I explained. "David is the one who forced Emily 4 years ago, and he did it under your orders." Nathan looks at me with disappointment, as if I had really made a huge mistake. I stood there, frozen. My mind was blank. The voice on the recording is indeed mine, but I can't remember what happened at all. "No, this is impossible. I don't believe it. It must have been forged by someone." My voice trembles, but every word is spoken with conviction. I know the kind of person I am. I would never do something unethical. Even if I dislike Emily, I would never want to harm her reputation. Besides, I actually don't hate Emily. We are the best of friends. Nathan just looks at me coldly. He doesn't say a word in the argument. Some vague images suddenly flash through my mind, but no matter how hard I try, I can't grasp those fragmented memories. Seeing me in pain and struggling, Nathan frowned. There was a hint of sympathy in his eyes, but in an instant, he returned to that cold attitude. He said, "What you did to Emily in the past, she is treating you this way today. That is already showing mercy." "Nathan, you know my character. You know I wouldn't do that." I reached out my hand, wanting to hold his hand, searching for a bit of warmth and trust, but he skillfully avoided it. He said to me, "Sophia, that's just how it is. Stop trying to justify it." He sounded very impatient as he spoke in that moment. I felt like I had fallen into an ice cellar. Everything around me became strange and cold. Nathan was about to leave the ward. I suddenly called out to him. "Since that's the case, then why do you still want to propose to me?" He stopped in his tracks before he could say anything. Emily spoke with a voice full of resentment and sharpness. "It's me who made him do this. Nathan is doing this to help me get revenge on you, to make you a complete laughingstock." Emily stood at the door of the hospital room, looking at me with a blank expression. She looked frail. Her face was pale. There were many scars on her wrists in my memory. Emily was a particularly sunny and cheerful girl. She was always smiling. It seemed like nothing could trouble her. The fact that Nathan and I could be together was largely thanks to her enthusiastic help. She was once my best friend. Now she hates me to the core. Nathan also turned to look at me. We stood one in front of the other. They examined me with their eyes like judges. After they left, I just opened the message from that unfamiliar number. It said, "Your diary holds all the truths. Please believe in yourself. Save yourself from the predicament." Is this a diary? I don't have a habit of keeping a diary. Could it be something I wrote when I was amnesiac? I hurriedly got out of bed. I stumbled out of the hospital. I hailed a cab. On the way, I called my parents over and over, but no one answered. When the car reached the Smiths' villa, my mom finally answered the phone. She sounded very impatient. "Sophia, what exactly do you want? Didn't I tell you not to contact me unless it's urgent?" I stood there, holding my phone, slightly trembling. My heart was filled with confusion. The mom who once doted on me, why has she become so indifferent now? I didn't have time to ask more. Then I heard Emily's sweet voice on the other end of the phone. "Mom, hurry over." Dad was shouting from behind. "Run slowly. Don't fall." Suddenly, I felt a daze in my head. My heart was filled with confusion. I could hardly catch my breath. How could Emily be at my house and so affectionately calling my parents? Why were my parents so lenient with her? At that moment, it started to drizzle. I was completely unaware. I was still holding the phone. The call had already been disconnected. Suddenly, an umbrella appeared over my head, blocking the wind and rain. I turned to look. It was Nathan. Sophia, what are you doing here? You've been in the rain for so long. You're going to catch a cold, he said softly. But now I was listening. There's a complex feeling in my heart that I can't put into words. I looked at his face. The tears suddenly became uncontrollable. They burst out. Nathan, how did it end up like this? Emily is very close to my parents, but why are my parents so cold to me? Because, Sophia, you made a mistake. We are all trying to help you make up for it. Nathan took me back to his home. He said, this villa was prepared as a wedding house by both our parents. He held me in his arms. I was completely soaked. He said, Sophia, I truly want to marry you. It has nothing to do with anyone else. Maybe it's because I got caught in the rain. I feel like my whole body is stiff. His embrace used to make me feel warm. It made me particularly attached. Now, I just want to pull away, seeing me struggle. He let go of me. Nathan gently brushed my nose. Speak. Go take a hot shower. Don't catch a cold. It's just such a simple action. Yet it suddenly flashed a vague image in my mind. In a dimly lit room, Nathan and Emily are standing together. Their expressions are a bit strange. It seems like they are discussing something. Before I could see more details, the image disappeared, leaving me with a heart full of confusion. I walked numbly into the bathroom. Hot water flowed down from above, but the coldness in my heart did not ease at all. Thinking of what Nathan said, we are all helping you atone, I increasingly felt that things were not so simple. After the shower, I saw that Nathan had already brewed hot tea. He was staring at me. The tenderness in his gaze momentarily made me lose my senses, but the image that surfaced in my mind made me more cautious of him. At night when I went to sleep, I dreamed that I walked under a tall tree. The tree is adorned with red silk. In a dream, I exerted a lot of effort to dig out a diary from under the tree. The diary contained many photos. In the photos, I used to be very close to Emily, but in some other photos, it seems like I'm threatening Emily. I was intently looking at these photos. Suddenly, I heard Nathan say from behind, "What are you doing?" I was so startled that I quickly turned around. The album in my hand fell to the ground with a thud. "Nathan, what's going on with these photos?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why does it look like I'm bullying Emily?" Nathan's expression instantly darkened. He said, "That was all in the past. Just don't bring it up again." After saying that, he was about to take the album away. I wasn't willing to let it end like this. I started to argue with him. In the chaos, Nathan accidentally pushed me down. I fainted suddenly. When I wake up again, I find myself in a strange room. I haven't reacted yet. Suddenly, the door opened. Emily and Nathan walked in. Their usual fake smiles were gone. They wore cold expressions instead, and had strange smiles. "Sophia, welcome to your place of atonement," Emily said coldly. I suddenly woke up. My body was drenched in cold sweat. I walked out of the bedroom. I wanted to breathe some fresh air. Unexpectedly, when I reached the corner of the stairs, I saw two people standing in the dim living room from their silhouettes. I recognized Emily and Nathan at a glance. They were standing very close. They were talking. Suddenly, Emily stood on her tiptoes and kissed Nathan on the lips. Nathan was momentarily stunned. When he came to his senses, he enthusiastically responded to Emily. Nathan tightly wrapped his arms around Emily's waist, as if he wanted to merge her into his own body. This scene felt like a sharp knife. It plunged directly into my heart. I stood frozen in place. My mind went completely blank. My body involuntarily trembled slightly. Memories of being with Nathan kept surfacing in my mind. The scene before me was too blinding. It made me dizzy. I wanted to rush over and ask for clarity, but my feet felt like they were nailed to the ground. I couldn't move at all. It felt like something was blocking my throat. I couldn't make a sound. The anger, pain, and despair in my heart surged like a tide. It almost drowned me. I don't know how long it took. They finally separated. Nathan looked up. He happened to see me. The warmth in his eyes instantly vanished. Only confusion and unease remained. "Sophia, let me explain," he said anxiously. "Is there still a need for explanation?" I interrupted him. His voice was somewhat hoarse. Emily let out a cold laugh. She was still tightly holding onto Nathan's arm. "I was the first to like Nathan, and I was the first to know him. It was you who later intervened. You did it to win him over." You even bullied me at school. No, although my memory is a bit chaotic. But my memories before I turned 20 are still clear. Back then, you encouraged me to bravely confess. It was you. I was just about to continue. Nathan suddenly interrupted me sternly. Enough. The surroundings were dimly lit, but I could still vaguely see the impatience on Nathan's face. At that moment, I felt as if I had been splashed with cold water. All the blood in my body seemed to freeze. Nathan, everything is over. Our relationship ends here as well. After saying that, I left without looking back. I completely ignored them calling me from behind. I understand. I can't stay in this so-called wedding house for even a minute. I walked out of the villa. I wandered aimlessly on the street. My heart was filled with confusion. On the street at night, there were quite a few people. I felt like I had lost my soul. I walked mechanically through the crowd. Suddenly, a passerby bumped into me. My head hit the railing by the roadside. The person quickly helped me up. They kept apologizing to me. I shook my head. I softly said it was fine, but just as I turned around, my head suddenly hurt badly. A tree covered in red cloth strips appeared before my eyes. This tree is exactly the same as in my dream. It was tall, reaching up to the clouds. Suddenly, more memories flooded my mind. This is the sacred tree of the village. I heard that. Just hang a red silk with both of our names on the tree. The gods will bless them to be together forever. Look, that highest red silk has our names on it. The gods will definitely see it. You don't deserve it. Someone like you doesn't deserve the blessing of the gods. Sophia, you deserve to be punished. I remembered, based on my vague memories. I arrived at an ancient Mayo village. The villagers were very warm and welcoming. They heard I was looking for the sacred tree. A few of them happily set off with me. After the villagers left, I stood in front of the sacred tree. The red silk on the tree fluttered in the wind. This is where Nathan and I confirmed our feelings. This is also where he and I completely fell out. I always thought our feelings were deep. Unexpectedly, this was just unrequited love on my part. Nathan has been deceiving me all along. He got close to me. He chased me. Actually, it's to help Emily deal with me, the bully. He spent a year on it. He was incredibly nice to me. He made me completely trust him. But in the next 4 years, he pushed me into the abyss. I lost all my friends. I stand before the sacred tree. The beautiful memories in my heart collide with the harsh realities I now know. It makes me feel dizzy. My legs are weak. I almost can't stand up. I look at the red silk fluttering in the wind. The scene of embracing Nathan under the tree seems to be right in front of me. But now, all that's left in my heart is endless sadness and anger. Why? Why did you treat me this way? I shout into the empty surroundings. My voice is filled with despair and unwillingness. Emily and Nathan have known each other for a long time. Moreover, Nathan has been pursuing Emily for many years. When I treated Emily as a close friend and confided my thoughts to her, she took my words as a joke. Those fragmented memories keep surfacing in my mind. I suddenly remembered a time when the three of us went out together. Emily kept making jokes about me and Nathan along the way. As a result, she annoyed Nathan. At the time, I thought Nathan was just shy. Now I understand. Nathan didn't want the person he liked to push him onto someone else. Coming back to reality from the memories, I directly dug out the diary that was buried deep in my memory. I dug for half an hour. My hands were numb and in pain. Finally, I saw an iron box. My hands were shaking badly. I carefully dug the iron box out of the ground. I wiped off the dirt on it. This box was buried by me personally. As for that reminder message from an unknown number, it was also a timed message I set up while I was still conscious before losing my memory. I suffered a severe head injury. My memories became fragmented. The doctor told me my condition would fluctuate between good and bad. It might take a while. I will forget some things again. I'm not sure when I'll forget everything again. Before that, I need to figure out Emily's true identity. The diary is in the box. The photos are inside. It's different from what I saw in my dreams. These were all taken secretly. They captured me when I was being bullied. In the photos, Emily looks like a hero saving someone. Moreover, there's a row of numbers written on the back of the photos. When I was covered in mud, when Nathan found me, I was just taking off the red ribbon. I let go of the red ribbon that had our names on it. It fell into the muck. Nathan looked at me with a complicated expression. He asked, do you remember? I shook my head. No, I just suddenly remembered some fragmented images. Then I thought of this tree. Nathan stared at the blank notebook in my hand. He asked in confusion, "What is that?" I instinctively touched the pocket of my coat. There were photos hidden inside. I pretended to casually toss away the notebook. Say it, I don't know where it came from. I picked it up casually. I went back with Nathan. He drove us to the Smith family villa. My parents were sitting on the sofa. They looked very serious. Emily was sitting between them. She seemed very quiet. When she saw me arrive, she suddenly flinched. Then she started shaking uncontrollably, as if she had been triggered by something. Sophia, what did you do to Emily? Mom immediately went to comfort Emily after seeing this. I coldly smiled. I didn't do anything. She is just feeling guilty. She's feeling guilty. Dad also stood up. He said seriously, "Don't speak recklessly. Emily has always been very well behaved. It's you instead. Why have you been so unreasonable lately? I watch them, and I feel very disappointed. My parents used to love me so much. Now they are fooled by Emily's facade. Nathan is a bit different. He keeps staring at me. Even though Emily is already in pain, he doesn't care at all. Emily suddenly loses control and shouts, "Don't come over, don't come over. Please don't come over." My mom held her in her arms. Her eyes were filled with heartache. My dad took the chance while everyone was still reacting. He raised his hand to hit me, but this slap didn't hit me. It was Nathan. Nathan reached out to block the slap. The room fell silent. Everyone was stunned. They all looked at Nathan. I was surprised too. I can't understand why he suddenly did this. Nathan said softly, "Uncle, don't take action." His voice broke the silence. Dad felt a bit awkward after what he said. His face turned from pale to flushed. "Nathan, what are you doing?" Nathan didn't speak. He just kept staring at me, as if he was pondering something. Emily was still pretending to scream in her mother's arms, occasionally glancing over at us. Her feigned behavior was becoming increasingly annoying to me. I couldn't help but ask, "Nathan, what do you mean by that?" Mom couldn't help but speak up. Her tone was filled with dissatisfaction. Nathan frowned. "Say it. Sophia is my fiancé. I don't want anyone to bully her. I don't want anyone to bully her." I suddenly became curious. What exactly does Nathan mean by this? He designed it with Emily. I ended up being blamed for bullying. Now he pretends to want to protect me. Emily was also stunned. She stared at Nathan in disbelief. In that moment, the light in her eyes gradually faded. Nathan had not looked at him the whole time. He had a brief chat with his parents. It meant marrying me as originally planned. Then, he took my hand and walked out of the villa, completely ignoring everyone's surprised expressions. I did not resist. His figure appeared tall and straight against the sunset. We got into the car. No one spoke the entire way. I watched the scenery fly by outside the window. My gaze was blank. Nathan's behavior was very strange. I couldn't understand what he was thinking at all. Why, after the car stopped, I couldn't help but ask. Nathan was silent for a long time. His eyes were filled with complicated emotions. I didn't understand for a moment. He spoke slowly, "Sophia, whether you believe it or not, I truly want to marry you." I kept silent. The car suddenly became a bit eerily quiet. He also stopped talking. I continued to focus on driving. I dozed off in a daze in that half-asleep state. I heard a very soft voice say, "I regret it." In the days that followed, Nathan was busy preparing for the wedding. Emily came to cause trouble a few times, but every time Nathan sent me away. One time it got particularly out of hand. Emily shattered the glass bottle. She held the shards against her neck. She didn't care that there were others around. She shouted directly at Nathan, "Didn't you say that you would always protect me? Weren't you just playing with her? Why are you really going to marry her? You clearly know she bullied me. How can you like someone who hurts me?" Nathan's tone was calm and firm. I suddenly felt that spending a lifetime with her might not be so bad. At that moment, I was awakened by the sound of arguing. I followed the sound to the back garden of the villa. At that time, Emily was holding a piece of glass to her neck. Blood was already flowing from her neck. Emily, who usually obeyed Nathan without question, at this moment, he didn't even furrow his brow, as if she were just an insignificant stranger. Emily continued to shout, "Talk to me. How can you really love her?" Nathan's usually calm face finally showed some fluctuation. He slightly raised his eyebrows. "I can't explain this either. Feelings don't really have any logic to speak of. Anyway, I just want to marry her." Emily's eyes widened suddenly. Nathan's words made my heart tighten. The painful memories of betrayal surged up immediately. Now, his direct expression of feelings left me unsure of what to do. I'm standing in the shadows, watching all of this. It feels like my feet are stuck. I can't move. Emily shouted excitedly, "You lied to me. You clearly said you would help me deal with her. You also said the one you love is me." She lost control of her emotions. She cried out hoarsely. The glass shard in her hand pressed deeper against her neck. Blood flowed down her fingers. Nathan looked at her with a complex expression. "Speak. Emily, you're too stubborn from the very beginning. I shouldn't have gotten involved in your matters. Do you regret it?" Emily's voice trembled slightly. Nathan nodded and said, "Yes, I regret it. Fortunately, I still have a chance to make up for it." Emily was stunned, suddenly burst into wild laughter. She gripped the glass shards tighter and tighter. The ground was covered in blood. It looked very terrifying. She cried as she spoke. "You know very well, she has caused me such misery. You, really, Emily, you've told so many lies, you probably believe them yourself now." Nathan asked with a smile. This time, not just me. Even Emily was stunned. Nathan continued, "I'm not stupid. Your acting is really terrible. I was willing to cooperate with you back then. It was only because you were the only one in my heart. As for whether Sophia was innocent at that time, I didn't care at all. Now, I care about her. So you can't hurt her anymore." After hearing this, my heart suddenly sank, as if something heavy had struck me. I never expected the hurt he caused me before. He actually downplayed it so much. He didn't care at all. Suddenly, anger, grievance, and resentment surged up in my heart. My hand unconsciously clenched tightly. My nails were almost digging into my palm. Emily's smile suddenly froze. Her eyes were filled with surprise. "What did you say? You didn't care whether she was innocent before. So what do you count as now?" Nathan said softly, as if he were talking to himself. "Later, I spent more and more time with her. Slowly, I became attracted to her. At the same time, I also started to feel annoyed by all of this." Upon hearing these words, Emily suddenly broke down. She cried out loud. The glass shards in her hand also fell down. She slumped helplessly to the ground. She kept murmuring softly, "No, this isn't real. You're lying to me. You're lying to me." I turned around and ran. I rushed into the bedroom. I quickly locked the door. I came back to my senses. I took out a photo. There was a string of numbers on the back of the photo. That was the password to unlock a folder. My hands were shaking a little. I opened the computer. I entered that string of numbers. The folder opened immediately. I opened the folder. There were several audio and video files inside. There were also a few encrypted emails. I first clicked on an audio file. I heard Emily talking with someone who had bullied me before. They were discussing how to frame me. They also mentioned how to use Nathan. They even brought up important details about David's rape case from years ago. This was the first time I had seen this evidence in full. Before my memory loss, someone had quietly sent me this evidence, including those photos. After I obtained this evidence, I suddenly realized my memory was fading quickly. I had forgotten many things. To avoid completely forgetting about these matters, I set up a scheduled message, 1 message per month. I also buried the photos under the tree at that moment. The scheduled message came again. "Run. Don't trust anyone. My wedding with Nathan is about to start. My parents came to find me. They hinted that they hope I can cooperate with them. They plan to switch brides without Nathan knowing." I agreed. I never intended to actually marry Nathan from the beginning. They were finally satisfied. Before leaving, I still couldn't hold back. I asked them, "Why do you hate me so much?" The two of them listened. My body suddenly froze. Dad and Mom exchanged glances. Dad spoke first. His voice was a bit hoarse. "Sophia, there are some things you don't understand. We also have no choice." Mom lowered her head. Her eyes were red, but she never spoke up. I gave a cold smile. "Because I am not your daughter. Emily is." My parents looked at me in surprise. The atmosphere was so heavy it was hard to breathe. After a long while, Dad sighed. "Since you already know, there's no need for us to hide anymore. You are indeed not our biological daughter. Emily is. She has been wandering outside for so long. Now we finally found her. We must take good care of her. Furthermore, you always bully her. You are the one who caused her to be depressed. No matter how we treat you, it's all your own doing." Mom nodded in agreement. I couldn't help but laugh. I laughed so hard that tears came out. It's really too fake. These two people are really too fake. I always thought I was biological, but later I thought, what kind of parents would treat their child like this? I began to have doubts, so I quietly went to get a paternity test. I discovered that I was indeed not biological. After further investigation, I learned that they switched my identity with Emily's because they had offended someone. That person was David. David's parents used to work at the mine run by the Smith family. Later, there was an accident with the mine cart. They unfortunately were crushed to death. The Smith couple was worried that this incident would affect the mine's production, so they chose to conceal it. They didn't let the news spread. They didn't even provide the most basic compensation to the victims' families. At that time, David was only 8 years old. His only family member was his elderly grandfather. To fight for compensation, David's grandfather went to the mine multiple times to demand an explanation. During a dispute, the old man suffered a cerebral hemorrhage and passed away. Just like that, only one child from the family of 4 was left alive. Later, Emily was born. David did it for revenge. He secretly handed Emily over to a human trafficker, but unexpectedly, the Smith couple was very lucky. The trafficker hadn't even managed to take Emily out of the country before he was caught by the police. Emily was eventually found. However, after going through that incident, she was left with a psychological scar. The Smith couple also realized that their previous actions were wrong. They had developed a deep hatred towards David. To protect Emily, they hid her away. At the same time, they adopted me, and so I became Emily's substitute, and Emily already knew all of this. She was still unhappy. She saw me become the Smith family's daughter, living a life of luxury, and felt imbalanced inside. She wanted to ruin me, and so I lived in a world full of schemes and conspiracies. I went to the police station to see David. He will be out in a month. This time I met him. He has become much more peaceful. He is no longer as irritable as before. I understand. These are just his facade. His inner resentment still remains. At that time, he planned to take revenge on the Smith family by destroying Sophia. He accidentally saw Emily standing with the Smith couple. He felt she looked too much like them. So he concluded that she was the child from back then, unexpectedly. This misunderstanding surprisingly led him to complete his revenge, but he did not understand the truth. After being caught by the police, he mistakenly thought he had targeted the wrong person for revenge. He was in immense pain inside. David, long time no see. I said calmly, I have to tell him. He targeted the wrong person for revenge. The wedding officially began. On the day of the wedding, everything was proceeding as planned. I wore a mask and a hat, hiding backstage. I watched Emily, disguised as the bride, slowly walk towards Nathan. Just at the moment they were about to exchange rings, Nathan seemed to sense something was off. He suddenly turned his head, staring straight at me. This isn't Sophia. Where is she? Nathan's voice was cold and a bit angry. He threw the ring away. He tightly gripped Emily's neck. The scene suddenly became chaotic. The guests looked at me. I looked at you. No one knew what had really happened. Emily's face turned red from the choking. She struggled desperately. She tried hard to pry Nathan's hand off with both hands. She made muffled sounds. Nathan, are you crazy? She managed to say a few words. Nathan still had a cold expression. His eyes were filled with anger. You think you can keep this from me? Tell me, where is Sophia right now? His voice was deep and threatening. The air around seemed to solidify with this anger. Smith's parents rushed forward. Let her go. Nathan and Smith's parents were in a standoff. Suddenly, the large screen behind played a video. It was footage of me being bullied back then. Among the guests present, those who recognized the 3 of us started to whisper, "What's going on? Wasn't it said that Emily was bullied? Why is it now Sophia?" Maybe it's because the dragon slayer has also turned into a dragon. After being hurt, they bully those weaker than themselves. Exactly. So Sophia brought this upon herself. Nathan let go of Emily's hand. His gaze was completely drawn to the video. He probably guessed long ago that the bullied person was me, but seeing it with his own eyes was completely different. Ever since he realized his feelings, he has been trying to avoid these facts. Today, Nathan witnessed everything firsthand. My mood became tense as well. His eyes turned red. I heard the people around me speak ill of me. He shouted angrily, "Stop talking." Immediately after, the video suddenly changed. I was cornered by several girls. They pushed me and insulted me with harsh words. Emily stepped up. She protected me like a hero. She drove away my bullies. Before everyone could react, the video suddenly switched. Emily was standing with the girls who used to bully me. They laughed and mocked me. She might have been too naive to actually believe you. This is really satisfying, making Miss Sophia look foolish. Emily was laughing especially happily. She replied, "Isn't she just a dog?" Everyone was stunned by this scene. They were all taken aback. Nathan's expression suddenly turned very ugly. He turned his head to glare at Emily. Her eyes were filled with rage and ferocity. "You did really well. Emily, Nathan, This is all a misunderstanding. It's her." The Smith couple stared in astonishment. They never expected that. Their seemingly innocent and pitiful daughter could actually have such a disgraceful side. Nevertheless, they still loved her deeply. So, they immediately began to defend Emily. "Nathan, this could be a misunderstanding. Moreover, haven't we all heard the recording of Sophia bullying Emily?" They discussed, thinking that Emily might have retaliated because she was being bullied. The more they talked, the more plausible this explanation seemed. Emily couldn't say a word. Faced with Nathan's angry gaze, she was trembling all over. She understood. Her relationship with Nathan had come to an end. She and Nathan grew up together. No one knew Nathan better than she did. Nathan is this kind of person. When in love, he would want to elevate the other person to the heavens. When in hate, he would wish for the other person's disappearance. His love and hate, both are too intense, too crazy, as expected in the next moment. Emily heard Nathan whisper something. "Your good days are over." The Smiths' parents are still holding on, facing the dissatisfied gazes of the guests. They played that recording, but after watching the video, no one believed them anymore. Some questioned, could this video be fake? Yeah, now even videos can be fabricated. Not to mention an audio recording. I spoke while walking out. I looked at the Smiths' parents, feeling no emotion inside after going through so much. Their shamelessness and lack of bottom line were already within my expectations. That's right. The audio is indeed fabricated. My tone was icy. There was an unarguable firmness in my voice. I held up a document. This is the expert institution's appraisal report on that audio. The report clearly states, the audio was edited and synthesized. The purpose was to frame me. I took out the report. I handed it to the guests present. Everyone passed it around one by one. Their expressions gradually shifted from surprise to dissatisfaction. This is outrageous. How could anyone do such a thing? Yeah, to harm others, they truly spare no effort. The guests' voices grew louder. They stared at Smith's parents and Emily with reproachful eyes. Smith's parents turned pale. They kept stepping back. Emily suddenly collapsed onto the ground. Her eyes were filled with despair. Nathan walked up to my side. He gave me a determined look. "Sophia, don't worry, I'm here for you. I will protect you." I shot him a glare. At that moment, the doors of the wedding venue were suddenly pushed open. David walked in. His gaze was firm, clearly filled with hostility. He said coldly, "The Smith family, today is your end." He shouted loudly. The sound echoed in the empty wedding venue. Nathan frowned slightly. He stood behind me, watching David warily. The Smith couple's faces turned pale. Emily was still engulfed in the pain of losing Nathan. Totally unaware of her surroundings, David sneered at the Smith couple. "You killed my whole family back then. Today, I will make you pay," he said as he spoke. He took a dagger out from his pocket and rushed towards the Smith parents. The scene suddenly became chaotic. The guests screamed and ran in all directions. Mr. Smith suddenly pointed at me and shouted, "This is my daughter. Sophia is my daughter." David turned to look at me. Nathan immediately became nervous. Nathan was about to make a move. Unexpectedly, David bypassed me directly. He rushed towards the Smith family, seeing this scene. Mr. and Mrs. Smith immediately understood that David already knew the truth. They shouted urgently at Emily. Run only then did Emily react. She stood up in a panic and ran. She had just taken a few steps when she tripped over a guest who was hastily escaping. She fell heavily to the ground. "David, don't get excited. Let's talk this over," Mrs. Smith shouted loudly. She tightly grasped David's ankle, but David kicked her away. David said coldly, "Speak properly. Back when you killed my whole family. Why didn't you think to speak properly then?" David shouted loudly. The dagger in his hand swung wildly in the chaos. Gleaming with a cold light, he looked at Emily with a cold smile. Emily was so scared that she kept retreating. Her face was filled with fear. I followed Nathan and quickly left the wedding hall. Just as I ran outside, I saw several police cars driving this way. The police quickly stabilized the situation. The knife in David's hand was also taken by the police. "Everyone, don't move. Come back to the police station with us." The police shouted sternly. I stood outside looking in. Emily was lying on the ground. There was blood everywhere. A knife was stabbed in her abdomen. Her parents were covered in blood. I crawled over to her, weeping very sorrowfully. Outside the wedding venue, a round-faced girl has been quietly watching us. Our eyes met. We smiled at each other. She is the one who secretly sent me evidence of Emily bullying others. She has been bullied by Emily before. She told me. We have both been bullied. But I'm not as brave as you. I'm afraid to provoke the Smith family. I hope you succeed. You must succeed. At the police station, David was still very agitated. He kept accusing the Smith parents of past mistakes. When the police were questioning, the Smith parents finally revealed the truth about the mine incident. The Smith parents were sentenced to 10 years in prison. David was sentenced to death. Emily has passed away. This turmoil has finally come to an end. Nathan's reputation has been ruined because of this incident. But he doesn't care at all. That day, he stopped me on the road. He said, "Sophia, let's talk." I stared at him in confusion and asked, "Who are you?" "That's right. I don't remember. This time I don't even remember Nathan." Nathan's eyes widened. He looked at me in surprise. He seemed a bit flustered. "Impossible. How could you forget me?" He looked at me as if I were a stranger. The pain was unbearable with every breath. "Sophia, I'm Nathan. We've been through so much together. How could you forget me?" I stared at him. I felt no sense of familiarity at all. Instead, I found this person very strange. Since Nathan discovered my amnesia, he has been trying to help me regain my memory. He keeps texting me. He wants me to remember the past. He started collecting our old photos and letters, waiting for me in places I often pass by. Then he hands the things to me. "This letter was written by you on my birthday. You said you hoped we could always be together, never to be apart." When he spoke, there were tears welling up in his eyes. I felt like an observer, listening quietly. I felt nothing in my heart. To help me regain my memory, he searched for experts everywhere, trying all kinds of strange methods, but no matter how hard he tried, I still couldn't remember those lost memories. And I couldn't love him like I used to. Days passed by. Nathan's gaze gradually lost its luster. He looked at me, as if staring at an unreachable dream. Every time I responded coldly, it felt like a sharp knife, deeply piercing his heart. After numerous failed attempts, Nathan gradually became silent. He no longer talked about our past with the same enthusiasm as before. He just stared at me quietly. His eyes were filled with pain and helplessness. One day, he came to find me. His gaze was vacant, filled with despair. I looked at him calmly. "Sophia, do you really not remember anything?" he asked, trembling. I gently shook my head. "I'm sorry. I really can't do it. Do you really? Do you not love me at all?" "I don't love you." Nathan smiled helplessly. Teardrops rolled down from the corners of his eyes. He understood. No matter how hard he tried, he could not change the past, nor could he restore the feelings between us. Since then, his physical and mental health continued to deteriorate. He isolates himself, no longer speaks to others. He spends all day thinking about the past, making himself very uncomfortable. As for me, I will also move towards my future, growing further apart from him. There will be no more contact. The sky is vast. The water flows far and wide. We will never see each other again.